Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live. Talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynncullenshow@gmail.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
And a good morning at you. It's September 12, 2022. And it's a Monday. And it's a beautiful morning. Stop with the weather report, Colin. Geez. I mean, Mondays are odd because they always follow, a long weekend from the show. Thursday morning was the last time I spoke to you, and Thursday morning, things have happened in between. A very old woman died, and the news people went berserk. I have to admit, and I don't know if it's just, I just refuse. I have watched absolutely zero, including cable. I have refused to watch any news because I can see, I think that Anglophilia, right? Love of the Brits, or love of, what is this? We fought a bloody, glorious revolution to get out from under the thumb of the British Empire, to pull ourselves out. And you would think now that we yearn for their embrace. I don't get it. I really don't quite get it. The incessant coverage, is it still continuing? Surely some things have now. I see it on what I do is I do social media. So I'm looking at Twitter, and every damn, the Brits do know how to do ceremony. And I guess we're enthralled because we don't do ceremony. And there's something about ceremony that obviously draws people in. And the Brits, it's so archaic. It's so alien to an American sensibility. But there's something, I guess, just sort of jaw-dropping about it. So I can see being attracted to that. But the reality is we know these people that comprise this family. And I'm sorry. I don't mean to listen, I don't know what I'm saying. I've got a lot of thoughts. I don't want to offend anybody. I don't know what to say. You would think the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette was the Liverpool Times for the last 4 days. I think today is the first day it wasn't above the fold, but front page ever since the Queen slipped her mortal coil. And huge. I don't even think, it was more so than like the New York Times gave it or others. What is the Anglophilia of the Block family? What's that about? I'm sorry. All seems silly. But it is, I guess, some kind of, it's like it's turned into the family itself has turned into a global, depending on how you look at it, soap opera or sitcom or whatever. And it is amazing, actually, how Camilla, who, I mean, was so hated, has managed to do a total like 180, and she's now the queen. Yeah. I don't get it. I don't get any of it. But the queen, the woman, born into this archaic institution, I often noted that anyone born into that, you know, if you think for a minute that you should be envious of them, living in palaces, wearing crowns, having people bow and scrape before them, it's a god-awful life. It has always seemed to me. It's, you know, the classic gilded cage. And given that her entire life had to be given over to this, and given how she did do that resolutely, unfailingly, I do have some admiration for her doing the job. I mean, the last picture we ever saw of her, she looked half dead. And she was half dead. She was going to die, what, a day later? And she was still working it. You know, the newest prime minister meeting her. Maybe that's what killed her. Maybe saying goodbye to Boris right before. That did her in. I don't know. I just don't care. And then the kerfuffle created by the CMU professor, who I must say did say something so ugly that even if you were inclined to agree with the underlying sentiment, you would have said, geez, I mean, it's a little strong there. This is a professor at CMU who was born in Kenya, one of the, I guess, part of the massive British Empire. And what did she tweet? Saying that she hoped that she heard the Queen was dying, and she hoped that she had an excruciating death. I mean, you know, I'm sorry. That's... I think the point could have been made better. However, perspective is everything. I was talking the other day. When you are a member of a group that has been trampled on, and the group that trampled on you is being held up as some kind of exemplar of everything good and great, yeah, I think you might have some animus toward pretty much everybody. It made me think of this thing I shared with you like a week ago or something, when I don't know how it came up, that you know, stirring anthem, "Onward, Christian Soldiers," which, I mean, the music of it always made me, I mean, I found it thrilling as a child. And then I found out that those Christian soldiers were slaughtering my people. Slaughtering them. Men, women, children. And I know what brought it up. They just dug up some grave in England. Speaking of the great English. And they had slaughtered, Jews on the Crusades. That's what they did. They killed them in England, then they went to France, they killed any Jew they found, they killed. So onward Christian soldiers. A Jew might have a different perspective on that. A Kenyan might have a different perspective on the British Empire. Because the reality is the Brits killed, tortured thousands of them, terrorized them, stole their wealth and resources, did the same to countless other countries. And yeah. And the professor at CMU, I don't know how to pronounce her name, Uyu Anya, she was impolitic. She was not polite. I mean, this is not what you do when somebody is dying or is dead. You know, don't speak ill of the dead. And it is also this issue that the Queen is a figurehead. She's like the pirate parrot. The Queen is like the pirate parrot. She is representative of the king. But she doesn't call the plays. And that is where I think having all that animus heaped on the figurehead as opposed to the government. And this is monarchy. It's why monarchy is actually sometimes not a bad idea, because you separate the government from the state, and the state is embodied by the monarch. And there you can have all the ceremony and the lunacy and all this kind of stuff. But the government, now that's the likes of Boris Johnson. I don't know. It's all rather complicated. But make no mistake, the legacy of the British Empire is one of brutality and thievery, okay? It'd be true of any empire. And we, as I started by saying, we took up arms against it. Which is why I find this lavish attention being paid to it a little much. But we know media knows what draws eyeballs, and it's a sitcom. I mean, it's a soap opera more. Although I found it often a sitcom. I mean, you've got, good God, this is a family. So her children are marching, march behind her casket or something. I saw something where they were today. I don't even know where the poor woman's body is at this point. She'll be taken from pillar to post. And, those children include a pedophile, a friend of Jeffrey Epstein's. Come on. Just saying, I've had it, done, it ain't over. When are they burying the poor woman? In a week? I think. Well, maybe, no, then it won't calm down, because then they'll get into the new king. I'm sort of happy for that hapless guy, because at least he finally gets to do something. I mean, again, he was born into that prison of not being able to essentially have a job until his mother dies. Grotesque. All right, I'm done with that. The other big thing, my God, what a two incredible football games in Pittsburgh. I know it's total change, and I don't do sports, but I have to note it. I turned down a very nice invitation to go to the Pitt game because I had other issues to be dealing with. But I thought, boy, that could be a good game. Oh, man, it was a great game. Not unlike in its back and forth and nail-biting stuff, the Steeler-Bengals game yesterday, which was ludicrous. It was almost, it seemed like a cartoon. I actually missed part of it because when the Bengals actually got a touchdown with second left or something at the end of the game, I said, well, damn, that's that. And I said to the dog, let's go feed the fish. So I went out into my backyard and I fed my fish and I looked at my fish and I swept some leaves and I puttered around for about 10 minutes. I walked back in and the Steelers had the ball. And I thought, what? So I missed. So I had to go. I missed the block extra point. Anyway, what a ridiculous game. It's the kind of game where it'd be hell to lose a game like that. But somebody's got to. Incredible. Just saying. And then my other team, the Packers, came on afterwards, and I watched about 10 seconds of that and said, I don't think I want to watch this. And it turns out that was a good call. And the problem there too is I really cannot stomach Aaron Rodgers. So it's hard to root for a team when you really don't like the quarterback as a human being. So, all right, I'm done. That's all apropos of nothing in particular. So those seem to be the two big things, just sort of on a not necessarily truly important level that people are probably talking about. The dead queen and the Steelers. Okay, just keeping it light for a second more. I watch a lot of old movies. And I wasn't watching a particularly old movie. What was that movie I was watching? I was watching, it's older, Revolutionary Road. Man, that's a good movie. I watched it again. That's with Kate Winslet and Leonardo DiCaprio about the emptiness of suburban. Excuse me. I choked. I said suburbs and I choked. Anyway, I was stunned because at one point, Kate Winslet, playing the wife, is sitting at her dressing table. I ask you ladies, how many of you have a dressing table? Is that what they're called? A little thing, a little desk-like thing with a mirror and often a flouncy little skirt around it. And it's where women would sit and paint their faces and do their hair. And it was I guess people had them because that was what a big part of being a woman was, looking right. If you were the wife, you had to, be somebody that would make your husband proud. And in this thing, which was set in the 50s, the 60s? Maybe the 60s. I don't know. She's talking to her husband, DiCaprio, and she starts brushing her hair at her little hairbrushing place. That there would be a place where you're supposed to sit and brush your hair. And anyway, she starts brushing her hair, and her hair looks perfectly fine. I mean, in fact, it's gorgeous. It's beautiful. It no more needs getting brushed than and I was stunned. You know why? Because this is something in old movies from the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, that you see constantly. I cannot tell you how many scenes there are where women sit and brush their hair ad nauseum. Brush. And it's often a scene in which they are talking or being talked to, and sometimes the brushing gets, sort of heated because it's the sense of the conversation that's going on. But I thought, I have never sat at a table and brushed my hair. I just want to say. Nor do I recall ever seeing my mother do it. What is this hair brushing? That women, used to sit for hours brushing their friggin' hair? And when their hair looked perfect. So, again, I was just surprised to see it in a relatively more recent movie. Oh, here we go. Wife brushes hair. And it seems, again, like nothing, but when you're a child growing up in a culture and you take in these scenes over and over and over again, you're being taught. You are being taught about what a woman does, what a woman should do. And I brush my hair once, maybe a day. God, what the hell? Okay, I'll stop. It's no big deal, but it's emblematic of many other things I could go off on. So I saw a lot of stuff this morning on the internet. People really pissed off at New York Times reporter Maggie Haberman, who apparently has a book coming out, or it is out, or I don't know. Who doesn't have a book coming out? I ask you. And the anger is that to sell the book, one of the things that is being put out there as a tease of what kind of incredible stuff is in this book is the fact that Haberman says that a number of people in the Trump White House, after he lost the election, told her that he said to them, more than one person, that he simply was not going to leave. I'm not going to leave. That's the quote. I'm not going to leave. I'm just not. I won, and I'm not going to leave. Now, the anger at her is because if she knew that, isn't it her job as a reporter to report it? As opposed to culling it from the information she's willing to share with her editors at the New York Times for their paper. And she puts it in a little box to the side, stuff for my book. And since I'm not sure when she had this information, if she had the information pretty much in real time, especially while he was still in the White House, and she didn't print that, she, as a employee of the New York Times, she should be fired. If she kept it for herself, for her own aggrandizement and a book deal. And she's not the only one. We're seeing this over and over and over again. Reporters coming out with books and telling us stuff that if they knew, why would you sit on it? Especially when it has to do with the first president of the United States refusing to leave the White House after the voters decided they wanted somebody else. It's sort of newsworthy. And there have been so many of these of late, all about Trump and the Trump White House. And I find it disappointing, to say the least. Speaking of him and what he's wrought, there was a fascinating little piece. I think Michelle Goldberg wrote it, but she's writing about another reporter who's himself has written a book. God, these reporters, they must just write 24/7, putting out books, putting out pieces, op-eds. But this guy I hadn't heard. His name is Luke Mogelson. He writes mostly for the New Yorker, and he has spent much of his journalistic career out of the country, covering some of the nastiest places, where nasty stuff's happening in the world. And he returned to the United States 2 years ago. And he returned because what he was seeing and reading about his own country did not appear to him to be the country he had left or a country he recognized. And so he thought, I got to go back there. What the hell is going on? For the last 10 years, he really hadn't been in the United States for more than a month or two at any time. So he came back because he felt there's a good story, I think, here. And Michelle Goldberg, wrote about some of the stuff in his book, what he sees. And a lot of what he sees is the kind of fracturing of the society, the civic, cultural, governmental, everything being sort of ripped apart and fractured. And he says, I've seen this before, but I've seen it in Lebanon. I've seen it in Syria. I've seen it in Afghanistan. I've seen it. This is what happens. And then I just want to share a few quotes because he said the important thing he sees that separates what's happening here to the war-ravaged countries he spent his journalistic life covering is that what's happening here is based on fantasies. Here's his quote. Every civil conflict that I've covered has been rooted in real injury, real grievance. In Iraq, for example, I was spending time with soldiers who had the scars to prove their suffering at the hands of people they were now fighting. But in America, what he saw was that the enemies that have created these enraged neo-fascist Republicans they're based in just outright fantasy. Antifa. Super soldiers. Antifa super soldiers. Did you know? Totalitarian globalists. Satanic pedophiles. That's us. That's Democrats. Satanic pedophiles. And he said whether or not the very real fear of these very unreal threats would be enough to sustain a hot conflict and people actually killing and dying because of these paranoias, I don't know. I've never seen anything like that. Okay? So here's a guy who's covered lunacy and friction and warfare all over the world. And he comes here, and a lot of it looks, oh yeah, that looks familiar. But underlying it, the thing that's blowing him away is that the grievances that are propelling these insurrectionists are, to use one of her words, phantasmagorial. Fantasy! Made up! Lunacy, craziness. They're not real. And Goldberg asked him, well, okay, but what surprised you the most? And at first he said it was the incredible power of these conspiracy theories among the people that he's been interviewing for the last year and a half, because he's gone to speak to these people. That's what his book's about. He's trying to understand what the hell's going on. And then he thought about it more and he said, you know what? I think the thing that is most surprising, and here's something you might not have thought. He says the most surprising thing is how really genuinely scared these people were. He said, for instance, I mean, this is one, for instance, a guy who's in the Proud Boys. The Proud Boys, macho guys, beating up people and stuff. There's a Proud Boy in Washington State who said he was afraid to be in a public park in broad daylight in downtown Vancouver because Antifa or Black Lives Matter people might attack him. Seriously. And he says it wasn't just him, that when he's interviewed Trump supporters at events in Pennsylvania, Detroit, D.C., if there were any counter protesters, anti-Trump protesters there, they would be genuinely panicked. And he says this is the result of Trump and his allies having told their audiences ad nauseum year after year after year that terrifying forces are arrayed against them, out to get them, and they need to be afraid. But this guy coming in with clear eyes, looking at it, and then talking to the people, says, never seen anything like it. And he said, were large-scale violence to erupt in the United States, it would be a war fueled not by real injury, but by delusion. And that is terrifying. His book, by the way, is called The Storm is Here. Oh. We have a caller still or not? Caller? Hello? Oh, I have a few callers. I'm sorry. Hello?
Hello. I'll try not to
Hi.
cough in your ear. I'm just recovering from something. It's interesting, like, that writer, he's going to try to figure out the psyche and understand them. It's always a one-way street that direction, don't you think?
Well, yes.
And
it's impossible, because how do you understand, as somebody, Margaret just tweeted, how do you fight crazy? How do you understand? How do you, I mean, if they've given themselves over to these myths, these crazy things, and they believe them, and they're paranoid, and they're fighting ghosts. Frightening. That's actually more frightening than if they were fighting something that was real.
When I have we have meetings at work, and we often have to go out on surveys at certain job sites, and one of the young women in our office, she had to go out to the north side to look at a job. And my boss, the vice president of the company, says, well, you better take your gun. And I'm like,
are you kidding?
No, I said, what are you talking about? I just ran there last night. It's a beautiful part of town. What are you talking about? And you better
take your gun. Well, there it is, the fear. Yeah, there it is, the fear. They're scared of black people. They're scared of black people.
Mm-hmm.
And they're scared of white people who live around black people and seem to, I don't know, be okay with that. I don't know. The fear is amazing. It is amazing.
Hey, well, the reason I called originally is because earlier you're talking about that journalist who held on to that piece of information. And you're right.
Maggie Haberman.
She should have reported it right away. I mean, that's big news as far as I'm concerned. But on the other hand, I mean, aren't journalists becoming a dime a dozen as we move on with our social media platforms and the internet? I mean, it's a tough job to have these days. So I'm asking the question. I don't know. Could she say
no? So there's an ethic. There's an ethic that goes with journalism, and that's not ethical. She's working and being paid by the New York Times. If she's got information, that belongs to them.
Oh, I understand that, but are times change? Is this a rationalization? So if I'm going to make a buck, that's not going to be through the New York Times or any paper. It's going to be through a blockbuster book. Is that a legitimate argument, or just not?
No, it's not.
Okay.
It's not.
Okay.
The only legitimate argument is she didn't know this. She found it out much later when she was, doing the book, and she didn't know it in real time, like when he was still in the White House. So maybe she thought, well, this is not so, need to know stuff. I can sit on it. I don't know. If reporters are making these kinds of calculations, they're engaged in the wrong calculations. It shouldn't be about that. Hey, I'm going to move on. I have another caller. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye. Yeah. I always take a gun when I go to the north side. Hello.
Yeah, I kind of avoid Mount Lebanon myself, at night.
Yeah,
but,
you do.
But no, the reason why I called was these conspiracy theorists actually deep down believing these conspiracies. I heard a point recently, about the pedophile thing underneath in the basement of the pizza parlor. That one guy went looking for, right? If it's such a big deal, why weren't all these other people calling the police? And there should have been mobs there trying to protect these children. So that tells you they really don't believe it. It's an excuse. It's basically saying, boo Hillary Clinton. So they're going to do anything they can, to make Hillary Clinton look bad or spread these kind of things. They don't truly believe these conspiracies. And that base, and you touched on it, while I was dialing, is fear. Not just fear of black people, but, Jews, everybody. They will not replace us. That's the biggest fear of being replaced. And recently I posted a picture of 3 young African-American women, winning some kind of, gold, silver, and bronze, when they do the flips and all that kind of stuff. Some
gymnastics.
Yeah. And there's 3. All 3 of them, gold, silver, and bronze.
Oh, the black is taking over gymnastics.
And it's one of those things. And I said, this is what the maggots fear. This is that base of all of it, and there's a new Lord of the Rings that I haven't seen, where one of the elf stars is I think he's Puerto Rican, African, or some kind of nonsense. And there's a big, huge controversy. He's playing an elf. A non-existent creature. They're like, whoa, a black guy playing an elf.
Elves are what? Elves are white.
Yeah, that kind of stuff where you get, you think about Disney princesses all through the years. As soon as you make a black one, as soon as there's a black captain of the Star Trek Enterprise, there's controversy. Because everywhere, and I had to go back to 2007 or 2008. A guy called your show when Barack was running, against Hillary. And he said this guy was a Democrat all of his life. And he said if Barack wins, he's moving to Canada. People jumped all over him. And I said, you got to understand, this was on your show. I said, and I was right behind him, or, a little bit behind us. This guy grew up at a time. I said, he could have been the least. He believed in equality, but the president is above you in his mind. You know what I mean? So that's a whole nother level.
And you can't have a black guy ahead of you.
That's and I said this to so many of so-called friends of mine back in the day. I said, you had no problem until somebody got into a position of power. And I said that, you could be as equal as you want, but when you feel, and I always try to tell people, the president's just some guy. He's the CEO of the country. He's not the god of the country. I don't even want to say king, because even kings and queens are just some guys. But and I think that's
he's treated with deference and respect, and and he has great powers, and he's supposed to be a white guy.
It's supposed to be, CEOs, everybody's supposed to be a white guy. That's coming up in that generation when that's all you've seen. It freaks you out. It makes you do stupid things and believe or say that you believe stupid things. Because I just said to somebody yesterday. I said, about Donald Trump. I said, all you have to do is take and imagine that Obama did exactly the same thing. No differences, but make Trump a black guy. And I say, it makes it easier for you to see that that you're being ridiculous.
Boy, there it is. there it is. But I don't know what we do about it, because you're talking about stuff, right, that is in people's heads, in their bones, in their sense of who they are and how they see themselves in the world. And yeah, and all of that got exploded with Barack Obama's presidency. And then on top of it, it's not just that. It's also all the other stuff. It's
like, watch entertainment.
It's gay marriage. It's and every time I see, and there's so many ads now where they're interracial couples and stuff, and I
lesbian couples, gay couples, I see them all.
Couples, gay couples, and you see them, and I mean, I might note it because it's still somewhat new to see it in a commercial, because commercials are about selling a product. They ain't going to do that if they're going to turn most people off. So it shows how much has changed. And for this big hunk of America, it is terrifying. It upends everything they know about how the world's supposed to be. Yeah.
Yeah, because I see it all the time. It's like, look at that.
You do.
And I confirm that. And just one more thing, I like to talk a lot, but I'll cut myself off after this. I was doing caricatures probably 8 years ago now at the, it was for a prom, but it was at Heinz Field. And a friend of mine's son was starting to do caricatures, so he was with me. And I said, wow, they need like reverse, what is that called when, they hire black people. They hire black.
Oh, reverse affirmative action.
I said they need reverse affirmative action here, because everybody I saw employed there looked black. And he goes, what do you mean? I said, look around. I said, almost all the employees are black here. And he goes, oh, I didn't notice. Now, he's a little white kid. he didn't even see it. He was so used to. He didn't even know. He didn't notice. I noted it because I've been around a lot longer than him, but he never noticed it. Same kid with his dad. His dad told me this story. Was they were in Walmart, believe it or not, and he said his dad said to him, like, I can't tell if that's a man or a woman, and he said to him, what difference does it make? Shows you the different. I went, man. Wow. I said, your kids. I said, your kids are teaching you lessons left and right, man.
Yeah. That's. I mean, who hasn't had that sense? Hasn't had that experience a lot in the last, 5 years, where you're looking at somebody or talking to them, and you're thinking, I don't know if this is a man or a woman.
And just the fact,
it's unsettling. I mean, it's unsettling. It still is a little unsettling because we grew up. I mean, I'm over 70 years old. You can't grow up with this binary thing. You're a man or you're a woman. You can tell which is which, for God's sake. And now all of a sudden, all that's up in the air. And even those of us who are inclined to be able to, like, okay, let's, move forward. Let's open things up here. Even we can't necessarily turn on a dime, which is why I have such trouble often with the lefties or the progressives that think everybody else is supposed to turn on a dime because they can turn on a dime.
The interesting
struggle.
The interesting thing is, in my immediate family, great nieces and nephews and stuff, I have there's two trans. And there's so many gay and lesbians. I can't even count them, in my head. But the one of the trans trips out. She goes absolutely, or he goes absolutely berserk if you mess up. The other one is cool. He see me slipping, understands that it's going to take time.
It's a process, right?
Yeah, to use their new name and all that kind of good stuff. So, like, I have that stuff in my immediate family.
Well, I do too. And relatively recently, one of my nieces is now going by they. But what occurred to me is, I don't know now. Is she my niece? She's not my niece, and she's not my nephew. There's not a word. You know what I mean?
A these. A them
But this is when you start screwing with language. I don't know how to say. I don't know what she is.
I take the long way.
That's not she. Well,
I call her my nephew's kid. That's my nephew's kid. I do stuff like that, you know. Yeah, I just say that's my nephew's kid. Yeah, stuff like that, you know. But then I really say that they go by they, you know, whatever, you know, whatever. She changed her name like 3 times, you know. Like, so give me a second, man. I gotta like catch up until you go. So the first one was cool. I like that one. You should have kept that one.
Yeah, I think, you know, in some respects, some of these, you know, if people are trying to be their authentic selves, you know, go for it. I wish them all the best. But to expect everybody else in your orbit to be able to, you know, to get it right away, to not have, you know, is obviously absurd. I mean, come on.
Yeah. But, you know, if I wanted everybody to identify me as I identify myself, you know, if they'd be lost, because I've decided that I'm a none. None. I'm nothing. You know, not male, not female, not black, not white, not this, not that. You know, everything you can possibly come up with to identify me, I'm none of them, except for Clarence. So I'm none. You have to do it me as an individual.
There you go. Well, I totally understand. Totally.
And you know what my email address is?
Yes.
It's all about zeros, man.
Yes,
none.
It is about zeros. None. Well, okay. I hear you. I'll answer to just about anything. So
yeah, too late for supper. You know that one.
Yes, we do know that one. Always good to hear from you, Clarence.
Okay, and I'll try not to call tomorrow, Lynn.
You don't have to try not to call tomorrow.
I'm just messing around.
Bye.
All right, bye.
I know.
Bye.
Bye. You know, my late father, he always was reading the news. I think I got my interest in current events and news from him, and I was always surprised that even as an older man, the part of that he loved of the Sunday New York Times was the wedding announcements. The you know, because they focused on certain couples and did little stories, profiles about how they met, this and that. It seems like such a girly thing, but my dad loved reading these stories. He found them often fascinating, and I check them out too on occasion. But not yesterday. It was a picture of the couple that stopped me in my tracks, and maybe some of you will know now exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, long since a couple that's interracial or same sex would stop you in your tracks. This was even more startling. This is a picture of a very old-looking woman. I mean, white hair, wrinkled, not the hair, her face. She's lovely. She's smiling. She looks so happy. And she's holding her bridal bouquet. And the groom, with his arm around her, his head back in a, laugh, so happy himself, is not wrinkled. And his tongue. And I thought, no, this can't be a couple. Are you kidding me? She looks like his grandmother. So obviously I had to read this. And her name is Melissa Gibbs. She's 84 years old. She just got married. God bless her. And she married a guy who is a Romanian-born concert pianist and recording artist named Matai Varga. And he is 41, barely in his 40s. She's 80, what did I say, 4? So she's more than twice his age. So here's this picture of this 41-year-old man and this 84-year-old woman, his wife. And again, our sense of what is supposed to be gets jolted by such a picture. How can this be? And the only thing we can go to is, well, he's after her money or something, right? That's where people go. She must be rich. She must need the money. I don't know. Because we cannot accept the possibility that they are in love. And I read the story about them. He was a friend of hers. He had lost the place he was living in New York City. And she has a really big apartment, which might mean she's got money. And she had often had people staying there. So she said, sure, he can come and says to her friend, if he wants to stay here for a while till he finds his place, that's fine. And so he showed up with his suitcase. And this was 2006. Okay, they just got married, 22. 2006 is when they met. So that's what, 16 years ago. So she, 16 years ago, was in her 60s, late 60s. And he would have been, oh my God, his 20s. So, and she thought, she thought he was a very nice Romanian student. Anyway, they, living in the same place, were talking a lot, and they found that they just really loved talking to each other. They also had a love of going to cultural events, and so they would go together 3 or 4 nights a week. And within 4 years, they had actually become a couple. This is by 2010. So the marriage, they could have been married 12 years ago. They were a couple already and walking arm in arm. And of course, people would stare at them. And people would say, as he says, oh, you are so sweet to your mother. And he would get pissed off and always say, no, she is not my mother. She's my wife. She was not his wife, but he wanted to make the point. He wanted to drive home. So he would say, she's not my mother, she's my wife. And he says, I know it's shocking. It's a very big age difference. But, you know, it doesn't feel big when we're together, when we do the things we love doing and when we support one another in the ways that we do. And he tried for years to get her to marry him. And she said, why? We have this wonderful relationship. We don't need it. But then they were visiting Romania. He had just finished a concert. As I said, he's a pianist. And they were walking home, and she had this feeling, I do think we should get married. So they did. They got married. The last lines of the piece are reflecting on their relationship's unexpected trajectory from roommates to concert companions, to boyfriend and girlfriend, to husband and wife. He said, well, it's been evolving from the beginning, and it is still. Now, Margaret has written in and said, all I have to say is yuck. Well, okay, but love is love. Love is love. And I think these two people are, if nothing, they are courageous. Because this ageism thing might be more of a thing than even interracial or same-sex. That an old lady could attract this virile young man. I'm just saying. Whoa. Okay, that's it for me. And, geez, I didn't get to half the stuff I wanted to talk about, but such is the nature of the program. Tomorrow, we'll give it a shot, okay? Have a good one. Bye.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.